So today we're doing a flow for the hips. This is kind of my basic hip flow. We're going to look at the thigh as having 4 planes or sides, and we'll stretch each one. I might tell you a little bit about the muscles as we go. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to start with a half butterfly. So to start, we take our right leg out straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. If you have blocks or a blanket, you can put them under this knee if you'd like. A couple blocks under your forearms or a block on your forehead for a little extra support. We want to feel the stretch here. We want to feel safe, and we want to feel that we can hold this for the full 5 minutes. Okay? So just let gravity take over. Gonna come down, feel the stretch. And after that, there's nothing that you really need to do special. You don't need to breathe in any particular way. You don't need to chant a mantra in your head. You don't need to focus on a particular chakra. This is the beauty of this particular yoga practice, where we can just kind of surrender. Very much what yin is about. So all of those things of trying to control the mind, trying to control the breath, trying to control the body, we let all of that go. And we just surrender, and we're just patient, and we just wait. And that really is a lot of the power and the teaching of the yin practice. Okay, so take your time, but make your way over to the other side. This is the half butterfly. Should be fairly straightforward and simple. We're stretching the hamstrings, which are on the back of the left thigh, and we are also working what's called kidney and bladder meridian from the Taoist perspective, okay? Okay, so let's come up and we're going to take a rebound, which means we're just going to rest for a moment on our back. And then let's bring those legs in. We'll give them a squeeze and shake it off with a little bit of movement. And then let's go ahead and hinge up. So hands into the hips with the palms down. Extend the legs. If there's any pain in the back, bend your knees. Take a nice deep breath in, and as you exhale, lower the legs toward the ground just before they touch. Pause. Inhale the legs up and exhale as you let them pull you up to seated. Okay. I think this next posture is the most challenging in today's sequence, okay? And so this is called the kickstand. We're going to come into a tabletop position and try and have your hips directly over your knees to start, and then just take your right leg out to the right as far as it will go, and take your left knee to the left as far as it will go. Okay, and then you should feel stretch right in here. This is your groin or adductor muscles. That's what we're stretching. Okay, and you can play around with what direction your toes, feet point in, whether they're flexed or pointed, where your left foot is. So I have mine kind of pulled in. Where your hips are, so I've pushed my hips back onto my heel, but you could have your hips above the knee as well. So it's really up to you. Okay, so we're looking for this stretch in here. You can stay up on your hands, if you prefer. You can come down to your forearms. And again, this does not need to be super intense. If there's any pain in the knee, you could put a block under that knee. Okay, and again, we'll be here for about 4 more minutes. We're already about a minute into it. Okay, so we're about the halfway mark here. Again, this can be a very intense posture. I think there's just something about stretching the groin that can bring up a lot of sensation and as a result, a lot of emotion as well. So that's happening. I think that's pretty usual. Nothing to be surprised about. And just try and be aware of your breath and the sensations. Try and hold the posture, unless, of course, it feels like it's not actually safe for you. Again, please take your time, don't rush. And we'll gradually make our way to the other side. Okay, so we're looking for a stretch right in here. Okay, so try and find the stretch. Again, this is a kind of an awkward position to be in. You might have to play around with things a little bit. Feel free to do that. If it happens to be, if you've done this pose a lot, then you probably know how to get into it comfortably. But for me, this pose has changed over time. So, and that's common with postures. So my experience of it has evolved as my body has changed and evolved. My body changes and evolves, one, because of the practice itself. So the longer I stretch a certain area, very often the more change there is, the more flexibility there is. The other part of it is, of course, just time and aging. So things like injuries, just the way that my body is aging and changing. This changes my relationship with the postures. So that's a natural thing to experience. And so you may have to check in from time to time. And the way you did the pose in the past may no longer serve you. Okay, let's take a much deserved rest. I'm going to do child pose. So I'll bring my knees back in together and then just rest my forehead to the ground. But feel free to choose any position that's restful and comfortable for you. Good. From there, let's inhale to tabletop. This is called marauding bear. Move the hips and the spine around freely. We're both counter stretching and warming up, so we'll move into the hips next. The outside of the hips, rather. When you're done with that, you can tuck those toes, get into your legs a bit. Okay, and then from there we bring the right wrist or the right knee toward the right wrist, like so. The foot comes to the left side of the mat. I don't think you can see it on the camera, but my foot's over there. Some people like to put a block here. You're welcome to do that. But it's also okay to let the hips rock to one side or the other. The knee can point straight ahead or out to the side, and your left foot can be back toward the hip or drawn closer to the front of the mat. From here, we can drop down to the elbows, which is what most people prefer. Again, we're looking for a stretch here. You are welcome to stay up here if this is better for you. It's just difficult to hold for 5 minutes. This is another one where someone might like to put a block under their forehead and support their head. Feel free to do that as well. Okay, so again, please take your time. There's no rush. Usually if we're doing yin properly, we find that the joints and the connective tissue don't want to move quickly. And so honoring that, taking your time is important. It's a very natural instinct, you might say, to protect your joints and connective tissue. Here we're stretching the glutes, which are the muscles on the outside of the hip. We have 10 muscles in this group, so this is the largest group of the 4 that we're targeting in today's class. Unlike the last set, which targeted the adductors on the inside of the thigh, I think most people enjoy this stretch. It might be intense, but I think for most people it's an enjoyable stretch to hold. Whether we enjoy holding a stretch or not, to some degree in yoga it's not important, because what we're doing is very good for our health. So if we take a medicine that is cherry flavored and we like the flavor of it, or we take a medicine that has like a bitter taste to it, the truth is that the purpose of the medicine is to help us heal. And whether we like the taste or not isn't really important. And so this is how it should be with yoga as well. We do it mostly because it's good for us. And inevitably, we will like certain postures and certain things, and there'll be other things that are maybe more challenging or difficult. But ultimately, we do it because it is going to help us to become more whole. Okay, everybody. Good work. Let's unwind. We'll come onto our back and rebound for a moment. Let's bring those legs in, give them a little squeeze. And then as you're ready, hinge on up to seated. Okay, so now we'll do the half saddle pose. We take the right leg and fold it back like so. The toes can point back or out to the side. You can sit on a block if this is painful for your knee or your ankle. You can pad this foot with a blanket. You can also play around with the position of your knee. Okay, and what we're looking for is a stretch here in the front of the right thigh. So if you feel that, I recommend you just stay right here, seated. If you don't, then try lowering back, hands, elbows. You can put a bolster behind you, lay back on that. You come to the crown of your head or perhaps all the way back onto your back like so. Now, if you're all the way back and you don't feel the stretch in the front of your thigh, you can try working with this leg. So this very often does it. Many people will begin to feel a stretch here if they have this leg in this position. You can also try this, dropping it out to the side. Some people like to do this, the foot on the opposite thigh. For people who are really, really flexible, they may have to reach down and pull this leg in. And at an extreme, you can actually straighten this leg and pull it overhead, kind of like almost like a split. For, I'd say, probably 99% of the population, that's not necessary. You can just do this variation or even this first one and feel a stretch. Some people, again, may even be seated upright. So as always, I like to mention when talking about the variations that there's a misperception in yoga. And it's not just in this country. It's not just Western teachers. It's a lot. It's very common in yoga. And the idea is that the different variations are more or less advanced, and we're trying to get into harder and harder poses. So one day we're all going to be pulling our legs overhead because that's the purpose or the point of yoga, is to get as flexible as we can be. I, of course, started with this idea as well. And no one who trained me had corrected that viewpoint. Perhaps because they didn't know themselves. They might say things like, listen to your body, or don't push, or everyone's different. But very often there was still this sort of maybe unconscious or subtle idea that if we were doing something and going further or doing more, that was better. And again, they might never articulate this or verbalize this outwardly, but there was a lot of little signs there. And so it was really my teacher, Paul Grilly, who made me understand that the variations in the postures are there to adapt the postures to different body types and different abilities. So there's no question that some people have a lot more flexibility and mobility than others. Same with strength. Same with proportions. Some people have very long, thin limbs, and they are able to twist their body up into knots, basically. It doesn't make them better than anybody else. It doesn't even make them better at yoga. It may mean that they have access to more variations and more postures than others, but when we really understand what yoga is about, this doesn't matter. So while yoga isn't ultimately about health and healing, we could say it is about wholeness, unity, oneness. And it does share a lot with medicine. Medicine is ultimately about health. Yoga is ultimately about wholeness. And for many people, healing and health is a part of that wholeness journey, you might say. Let's switch sides. You may be able to switch sides on your back like me. Many people will not, so you will need to come up and then come back into the posture, which is totally fine. Again, you may not even be on your back, and that doesn't reflect at all. So again, notice in your own mind if there's a narrative or an idea that I'm on my back doing this variation because I'm the teacher and I must do a lot of yoga or something along those lines. No, I could be the teacher and I could be seated upright right now. In fact, I'm probably one injury away from that. It wouldn't take much for that to be how I do this posture from here on out, perhaps. Okay, that wouldn't mean that I wasn't a good yoga teacher anymore. Now, as a professional and a yoga teacher, it's true to some degree that being able to demonstrate postures can be important. So, yoga as a profession is one thing. It can be advantageous to be able to do more postures, but it's by no means necessary. Okay, it's by no means a requirement. There have been successful yoga teachers who can't even do yoga postures anymore, and they can still be very successful. It's a little bit like a coach. So I don't think we expect the coach of a football team to jump into the game and to perform nearly as well as any of the people that he's coaching. And yet, the coach is absolutely essential. So when we understand that yoga is really about wholeness, unifying the energies of the body and the heart and the mind, and when we're successful with this, there tends to come a tranquility. Our life starts to take place in a background of peace and joy. It's not to say that there won't be challenges or upsets along the way. This has been a very challenging time for me personally. The pandemic shut down many of the yoga studios that I used to teach at. And very often when you don't see students on a regular basis, they start to lose interest and they start to kind of drift away. And so there have been many relationships that I'd cultivated over years of teaching that may have come to a complete end. I may never see some of these students again. I'm no longer in their neighborhood. They no longer have easy access to the teaching. And even though that might seem like a small thing, it actually can greatly influence whether or not you stay connected with a student. So many relationships have changed in that regard. The yoga industry, as it comes back, seems to be much more fitness oriented these days. And I'm not really a fitness instructor, as I'm sure many of you have gathered. I'm most interested in, again, wholeness, in that cultivating that peace in the heart and the mind. Then you might say I'm also interested in healing to some degree, helping people to heal, because again, I see that as a part of the journey. And fitness, I have no problem helping people with their fitness goals, but it's certainly not a priority in my teaching. So if we can see yoga in a similar way to medicine or healing, then we can see that just as there might be several different medicines or healing modalities that lead us to health, right? That's what all medicine is. That's what every drug and every surgery, every medical intervention is designed to restore us to health. And we're not necessarily stuck with just one, right? The doctor may go over several different options of how we can go about our healing journey. So it is with the postures. The postures are a tool, and we want to pick the right tool for us at that time. And that can change. But we should never feel like we have to use a certain tool. That's a little bit like opening your medicine cabinet and seeing ibuprofen and saying, gosh, I need to use that ibuprofen. I need a headache or something like that so I can use that, right? We use the ibuprofen when we need it. And it should be the same with these postures. Okay, let's unwind. We'll just relax on the back for a moment. Okay, let's bring the legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And then as usual, I'll encourage you to grab your phone and set a timer for 6 minutes. Unwind into what we call a pentacle pose in Yin on your back, relaxed. Close the eyes. And see if you can commit to that 6 minutes in stillness.